That's a good loaf. Let's make some sourdough. We're gonna start by pulling our starter out of the fridge. So this first step is really easy. We just wanna get this to room temperature. So this is our starter. We're just gonna leave the lid slightly ajar, and I'm just gonna leave it on the counter. So for now, we're just taking the starter out of the fridge, leaving the lids ajar, letting it get to room temperature so that we can do the next step. You want a wide mouth mason jar. That's my preference. Personally, I think it makes it way easy. And then you've got your starter that you got to room temp. So I'm gonna put maybe a teaspoon amount into my mason jar, just like that. This is about how much I'm leaving in the original container. So I'm gonna feed this with 1/3 cup bread flour, 1/4 cup slightly warmed water, slightly. You don't want it hot. This is what you're looking for when you mix it. It's gonna be very thick pancake-like batter. We're just gonna put the lid back on, seal it, and we're gonna pop this back into the fridge. What I'm gonna do with this is I'm gonna add 1/2 cup of flour and 1/2 cup of filtered warm water. If you only have all-purpose, that's okay. Preferably though, bread flour just gives it a really good texture. So now that it's all mixed up, we're gonna leave it on the counter, and I'm gonna cover mine with a tea towel because you do want air to get into there, so you do not want to seal this. So it's gonna sit on the counter with the tea towel. You're looking for double in size, and a great way to do that is to put a rubber band or mark your container where it started so that you can see when it's doubled in size. So our starter's ready, and we are gonna make our dough. So let me show you what you're gonna need. Large mixing bowl, at least 2 cups of warmish filtered water, and I'm using pink Himalayan salt today. Bread flour, obviously. A measuring cup, I would say 1/2 cup. 1 teaspoon, and something to mix with. Into your bowl, you're gonna add 1/2 cup of active starter. We're gonna get this into the bowl, and now we're gonna add 1.5 cups of the warmish filtered water. So you're gonna stir this and mix this all up together until it starts to resemble like a really milky white. Next, we're gonna do 3 cups of bread flour. So now that's all added in, we're gonna mix it up really well. I am not adding the salt right now. It will change the taste and the texture of the bread in a way that I really like, but you don't have to. If you wanna add it in right after you put in the flour, you can totally do that. If you need to add a little bit more water because it's not picking up the stuff at the bottom, go ahead and do that. Just do a little bit at a time, like a tablespoon at a time. And then when we come back, I'll show you what the texture should look like. So your dough should look like this. We're gonna let this sit now for an hour before we do the salt. I'm gonna cover it with a damp tea towel. It's been an hour, so we are gonna add our salt. So what we're gonna do to our dough is we're gonna add 2 teaspoons of salt. The way that we're gonna get that mixed in, we're gonna add just a little bit of water. Start with a tablespoon or 2, maybe a little more. So now you're gonna start mixing the salt in by doing some stretch and folds. So I think it needs a little bit more water. So you're gonna wanna mix that up as best you can, and you can see that it's gonna have turned into more of a smooth ball. So now we're gonna do stretch and folds. So every 10 minutes for the next 40 minutes, we are gonna do some stretch and folds. I'll be back to show you exactly what that looks like in 10 minutes. Don't forget to cover your bowl with your damp tea towel. It can dry out really easily. Time for our first stretch and fold. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna stretch and fold it down basically. But you'll see the dough change over the next 40 minutes quite a bit. So we're stretching up and pushing it down and then turning it. Something I forgot to mention is when you're doing the stretch and folds, you're doing them about 4 to 8 times. If it starts to break, stop, cover it, and wait till the next round of stretch and folds. So now that we're done with the stretch and folds, your dough is gonna look a little bit like this. We're gonna cover it with that damp tea towel, and we're gonna leave it on the counter to bulk ferment. You're just looking for it to double in size. So our dough is ready. It's doubled in size. It's ready to be shaped. So we're gonna dump it out on my silicone mat. You might have to help it a bit, that's okay. I made a double batch. I am gonna make 3 loaves out of this. I'm hoping you can see these bubbles. It's perfect. So now we're gonna laminate and shape it. So laminate just means to gently stretch it out, but we don't wanna use a ruler or anything like that because for this loaf, we don't want to get rid of any of the bubbles. So this will work. It doesn't have to be perfect. So you're gonna fold it over on top of itself, and then you're gonna take the end and start rolling it, but you're gonna roll it side to side and tuck as you roll. So now what we're doing is we're pushing and pulling to build that tension. You're gonna do this until the ball of dough feels really round and smooth. You're gonna see some bubbles still popping up and forming. We're gonna keep pushing and pulling until we get it to the perfect ball consistency. So that looks pretty good to me. Now we've got our banneton. I put a little bit of flour in there. You're gonna take your dough and you're gonna flip it upside down. And you can either use a tea towel and just cover it up, put it in the fridge. For me though, I also use these little plastic, they're not hair covers. They are meant for food, they're food grade, but they make it so easy. My 3 loaves are done and ready to go into the fridge. They're gonna go in for the cold proof. They're gonna be in there for 12 to 24 hours. You can go a little bit longer. This is where they develop a lot of their flavor. I love a cold proof. So into the fridge these go until tomorrow morning when we will come back and bake them. We're ready to bake. So here's what we're gonna do to get started. You're gonna turn the oven on to 450 degrees. You're gonna put your cast iron Dutch ovens or whatever you're using to bake your bread into the oven. Pro tip, I put a pan underneath both of the Dutch ovens to prevent burning on the bottom of the loaves. We're gonna let those go for about 30 minutes to an hour. We really want those cast irons to be really, and then I have all my stuff set out. So these are gonna be the mats that my bread goes on and goes into the Dutch ovens. I'm gonna put ice in here because I'm gonna do a little bit of ice in each one. That helps it brown and rise. And then we're also gonna score them. So the oven is preheated, the cast irons are preheated. I pulled out my dough about 10 minutes ago. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip it right on top of these silicone mats. Now we're gonna score. All right, that's simple. Now let's pull out the Dutch ovens. Take off the lid. They're smoking. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna put this right inside. I'm gonna add 2 to 3 ice cubes. Do you hear the sizzle? You're gonna put the lid right back on. We're gonna do the same for this one. So we're gonna put these into the oven. So again, 450 degrees. We're gonna start with 25 minutes. We're gonna take the lid off and do another 15. Let's see how it's looking. So I'm just gonna put it back in for 10 minutes and I'm gonna check at the 10-minute mark and see if it needs to go any longer. I don't want it to get too brown. This is perfection. You wanna take these out of the pan and put them onto a cooling rack. Here's the bottom. I baked the loaves this morning and then I had carpal tunnel surgery, but I'm committed to finishing the sourdough video. You ready to see this crusty loaf?